Welcome to the Modern Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Giordani. Special guest today, Daniel Tromello. Him and I have known each other, honestly, for quite some time now. You were at a different company initially starting, and then you moved to San Diego, and now you have your own company. Major big flipper, wholesaler, mixture of all things. So I'm excited to get you on. You have a ton of knowledge, so this is going to be fun.
Yeah, dude. No, I appreciate you having me on here. Yeah, I remember I was telling my wife on the way down here that you're one of the first people I met when I moved to San Diego 5 years ago. Exactly. So today's my birthday, right? We're joking about that.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, dude. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And your birthday was last week.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And exactly 5 years ago, we were moving into our house. And I met you probably within a month or two moving down here.
Honestly, dude, I think it was before that. So it was when you, because JKV.
Transitioning.
Yeah.
Probably.
Not, because Kralik introduced us. Way back in the day.
No, it was Courtney, dude.
I think it was Kralik, because I knew Kralik from Pintar days.
Oh, okay, maybe it was him then.
And then I think he connected us when you guys were still working there.
Yeah, no, it was still working.
And then I don't think, because you and Travis you guys weren't even living here yet.
No.
Or I think Travis still lives there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's up in North County.
Oh, okay.
I mean, Orange County.
Oh,
but
gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, a long time. So it's cool.
It's been a minute. I've watched you grow a lot.
You too.
Yeah, we've seen each other grow a lot.
Yeah.
And we're wearing the exact same outfit.
We are. We're matching, which
is cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
No, man, it's been a journey for sure.
So how'd you get started in the real estate investing space?
Yeah, so that's a kind of a roundabout question and answer. So basically, I was saying prior to I was in financial services, right? So I was an athlete, did that. 25, 26, was completely lost trying to figure out my life. I just gave a talk at San Diego State University to some of those kids, and I think they're more mature than I was at 20 when I was 26. And so at 26, I got started in trying to do financial planning, insurance. We're talking about financial advising.
Yeah.
And then I started to do that. I was in a network marketing recruiting style of business, kind of like an EXP or Real, right? And I started to really network, really get out there, do seminars, events, all that stuff. And all the people that I sat down with that had any kind of money were in real estate or involved in it. And along the way, I met what I consider at the time a mentor, who's probably one of the most brilliant, creative people I'd ever met, and still in real estate. And I just kind of locked in with him. And while I was having my insurance financial services business, I was actually starting to build a real estate business kind of on the side. And so that's what got me interested in learning, investing. And then, that was the beginning, and then obsessive learning and just trying to figure things out. A lot of trial and error.
Of course, it's life.
And that started it, so when I effectively had to take over, it was field operations for the hedge fund, man, I had such an unfair advantage. Because of all the financial experience I had, people experience I had, and then the real estate knowledge. When I walked into the fund, and it's kind of not an arrogant way to say this, I was like, you're doing things wrong. And these guys raised $65 million. And I was like, whoa, if they can raise that much money and do this, I know a lot more, because I could be very resourceful. Because I knew how to invest with no money, right? So yeah, that's how I kind of got in, you know. And I came here, it was
now you
networking, getting to know people, didn't know anybody.
And that's kind of a different model, because you came from a different model from the real estate space, right? Because the previous company was basically a hedge fund that bought all over the nation, right? And they were doing courthouse stuff.
California.
Okay.
So basically they were buying all over Southern California, and they were fix and flipping everything. So I was picking up and understood how to pick up rentals using creative finance. And so subject to seller financing, all the stuff that's become very popular the last 18 months, I'd say. Right. With all just the rate changes. I knew what that stuff was.
Right.
And one of the biggest things that really helped me is because of the financial planning, financial advising world, I had a lot of the vocabulary.
Sure.
Which takes years to develop.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was really helpful. And yeah, they were fix and flipping everything. And I was just okay, this is okay, I understand it, but why are you doing all that
right.
at this kind of scale because the operations to manage that, I mean, you were talking about doing flips.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot of work.
It is. A lot of headache.
One, let alone, I used to make this joke. At one time, I was managing 45 projects at once, all over SoCal. Okay, so like either on the market, request for repairs, just breaking ground remodeling, or like in the middle of some remodel, right? And I used to make this joke with our team, be like, dude, what do you think the chances are that something's going on right now at one of the properties?
Probably
in
a
this
high
exact
chance.
moment.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a 100% chance.
Yeah, that's crazy. What, God, to flip that many all over Southern California, I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot, dude.
It's a lot. And they were using investment capital. So you guys had to turn their capital often, since they're paying interest regardless of, like, if you and I raised money for a flip, for example, to cover GAT funds, we're paying interest on it only when we borrow it. Sure. But like when 65 million is invested in a fund, you're paying interest regardless of if it's invested or if it's not invested.
The way the fund was structured was fundamentally wrong, and I can tell you why. So basically, the way it was structured is when you have that much money, you have to get investors what's called the word pref is used in real estate, right? Preferred return. And so if you're like, hey, which means it's a guarantee on the money. So if you have X amount of money sitting there, you're going to say, I'm going to give you preferred return of X amount percent. And the rest is upside gain, however the fund does, right? They had a preferred return of 12% on the fund. That's a pretty aggressive pref, but like not necessarily, so it was expensive capital, right? And then another thing was there were psychological components of leadership there that were wrong, fundamentally wrong for that kind of a fund. So if you take the wrong person, give them that much money, what happens is you can take the way the fund was structured. You know, mutual funds have what's called an expense load, or an expense charge. So I used to sell mutual funds, so why the vocabulary was like an understanding, right? That's a fee to have money sitting, whatever. So they would take let's call it a $15,000 fee to buy an asset from the fund to cover overhead. So the way the fund was structured. Now, and the problem is, and you and I both know this, and you've been in real estate longer than I, but you understand it, there's not a lot of those deals. So if you have $65 million you're trying to move, like you need to really deploy capital at a really aggressive rate.
Right.
And if your only focus is field operation, Southern California, and field operations are so challenging, you have to be constantly buying more deals to cover overhead.
Right.
So the fund was constantly buying losers to cover expense load and overhead, which if you have the wrong person at the helm running that, operationalizing that fund or whatever, like, so when I came down here to San Diego, I think there were like 21 losing properties.
Oh, jeez.
At the time. It was like something where like, and I called it inherited these properties because I didn't really know what was going on with them.
Right.
I mean, there were some that like, I was like, who bought this? Why did they buy it? How did they buy it? So there was a lot of personality issues, which brought me down here.
Right.
But if you get the wrong people that kind of cash, and that's, so I learned very quickly, right?
Right. What year was this when they started this fund and you got involved with it? Was this like 2000?
So I came down here. I don't know when they started it. I want to say they started it probably 16. I didn't raise the money for that fund or anything like that. I was brought down to, once I unpacked the business, and I was brought down here in what was it, babe? It was
2020.
It was 2020, dude. It was 5 years ago. You're right. October of 18, I got started with them.
Oh wow.
And that was in October. And then a month of starting with them, because I was actually driving 2 hours down to Newport, unpacking their business, making cold calls, doing about 365 calls a day, running the data side, acquisition side. And I was like, guys, like I can do this from and I was transitioning out of financial planning. So I was like, look, I'm down to come in and jump. But I was like, look, I'm just be very honest with you guys. And this isn't, like I said, I was like, because I didn't care. I had one kid, we had one on the way. I'm like, I'm driving 2 hours because I wanted to be a part of, and kind of understand what you guys are doing and be a part of it. I was like, but you're doing this wrong. And so within a month of doing that, they're like, will you take over San Diego? I was like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Especially with a kid on the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Another kid on the way.
Yeah.
What's going on down here?
Right.
So that was like, talk about like being a commando, like landing in.
Right.
And then, meeting people like you and networking and just trying to like
find more deals.
And fix this.
Right. But it's crazy now that you have, totally. I think business is a video game. I always talk about it. I feel like it's like the money's a scoreboard, right? Like it's just a byproduct of the game we're playing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting because I'm sure going into that, you're like, okay, this is so chaotic. Having this big fund, all this money, all this responsibility, to now your business model now, which we can get into that a little bit.
Yep.
And honestly, I don't actually know a whole, like I know some of it enough, I think. And I always talk about it. I feel like, because you flip and then you wholesale too.
Yeah.
Right? But is like 80% wholesales?
So yeah, I'll tell you the example because a lot of people are like, "What the hell do you do?" Like we had a friend at our house last night. She's like, "Explain to me what you do again."
Right.
Because it's different.
It is.
And I think like what I learned how to do is be incredibly resourceful with not having a fund. I was like, okay, like, I mean, even if you take, I'll get into like seller financing. Really, all you're doing is raising money through homeowner equity.
Right.
Okay, so we know there's equity. Like, how do I raise money and use that for myself? So, like, when I talk about being resourceful, it's like really being resourceful.
Right.
So, what I do is I'm a wholesale first, flip second business. And if you zoom out and look at the market, you have whatever. San Diego's called 3 million units, whatever. It's like, okay, like how many of these units are distressed, are going to need work, at some point going to be a cash deal, at some point, whatever. And, okay, let's call it an X amount of, okay, there's...
It's $200 a month.
Whatever. Right. 4% of the market is like typically the math, whatever.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, there's no way I'm going to flip all those deals.
No.
Let's be
There's
totally
no way.
frank.
Yeah.
But if I have a really good acquisition strategy and model, how do I monetize every deal that comes in?
Right.
So now the business is about, okay, I look at wholesale and real estate as trading. I don't look at it as, you know, like I guess the typical term of wholesale. I look at it taking like hedging your bet on the deal.
Yeah.
So if I want to hedge my bet, now you can sell a contract, right? You can sell the rights of the purchase for a fee, or you can just sell the property itself and sell the asset.
Right.
And so I got really, really good at is trading these very quickly. So
Sure.
I'll buy and sell them sometimes in an hour.
Right.
So the model, here's what I learned though. As I was starting to like do this business, right, and say, okay, and I still want to flip stuff,
Right.
but it's not like a majority of the business I want to do because I saw the bad side of it and how it's hard to do it at scale,
Right.
It's like, okay, how do I trade this to another investor? But here's the big caveat a lot of people miss too. You can do that and you can trade and you can make your money and you can go. Huge piece, okay. Now what I can do is the cool thing about the fixer space now you turn into a FSBO when you sell something.
Right.
Is traditional lending, you cannot force anybody to use your lending, right? All the RESPA requirements. There's no like, hey Josh, bought this house. Here's my mortgage. You're like, well, I know I want to use this other person.
Sure.
You can't force them to. When in hard money, you can.
Because it's not regulated. It's private.
It's private cash.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, here's the property. Now the whole point was, how do you zoom out? Still do 150 to 180 flips a year, but how do I monetize into as much as a flip without all the risk?
Right.
And that's what I did. I zoomed out and I was like, holy shit! And I was like, when I started the business, I was like, I can't believe everyone's been asleep at the wheel. That was the thought I had. It was like a level of excitement of like, no one's thought of this. Anyway, and people have, but I think no one knows how to actually do it. So we went and got a CFL license, the correspondence lender side, stand up the hard money side. That was your original model, right? So it's trade the property to an investor. Now you take a gain on sale, take your profit, whatever, like you would as a flip, and then also give them the interest-only hard money carry.
Smart.
And then I learned that hard money lending companies, their valuation is based off 1x their amount of volume in a monthly period, averaged over 12 months. So if you're doing 30 million in loans, which is, you and I look at it, if you look at hard money, it's a lot, but okay, that's only like 20 deals.
Right.
Or 30 deals.
Sure.
Which I'm
in
not
our
saying
market.
is not a
Yeah,
lot.
right.
The interest, your valuation of the company is worth that.
Right.
It's that valuable of debt.
Right. Plus, if you're charging 1 point at 12% interest and you're in at 75% of ARV,
because it's not
you're
amortized.
safe. Right. Yeah. That's genius.
And because there's a disposition side to the model where you can sell the property off, a lot of hard money lenders are really scared to lend money because they don't want someone to foreclose. It's like, okay, what if they foreclose?
Right.
That's the first thing everyone asks.
Sure.
But the nice thing about it is, I'm like, well, cool, but we have thousands of investors. I can just redispose the property to another investor.
Sure. You could just resell the contract again.
Yeah, just resell
or
the
the
property
asset
again.
at that point. Yeah.
So
I love
anyway,
that.
I think that's the kind of like high level.
Yeah. I think the scalability of the model, and I say this all the time, of the wholesaling model. I mean, we see people like GG, right?
Yeah.
And they
do a lot of deals.
completely pivoted from
I know.
doing fix and flip, main fix and flip, right? And at the time when the market shifted with interest rates hiked, I mean, I remember hearing a story like 50 properties in between construction on the market and all that stuff. I mean, I'd shit my pants, right?
It's too many.
It's too many. You know, there's too much risk, and especially like if you're taking a haircut on 50 deals really fast, that you still have to finish construction and all this stuff. That's a big haircut.
Yeah.
You know, let's say 5 million if you're losing 100K on each.
Dude, you're
it's crazy.
exactly right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It is. So I see these operations in other states and other areas, and you know, talk to other people who had really successful. I met some guy recently, and you probably know who he is. And he doesn't flip anymore, but he used to do like 100 flips a year, very consistently, never wholesaled. And the business model to have to do that is challenging. You have a lot of risk. You have a team that needs to manage it.
It's very cash intensive.
It is.
Think about how much cash it takes for one deal.
Right. Yeah. And I am like,
you know,
on my side of things, just because both of us, we get a ton of agent relationship stuff. So it is like kind of like that thin line of like, how do we maneuver it if it is a wholesale versus a flip, right? If the margins are just a little too tight, we want to pass on it, but we have someone else who wants to take it on. But now with direct to seller models and all of that, it's just so easy to move deals, wholesaling them, making quick 25,000 versus taking on risk and making 40.
Yeah.
So, I love the model, but I try as much as I can when it comes to agent stuff to do the flips if I can.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you sell and how you build your relationships with agents and brokers. Like, but I've wholesaled hundreds of houses with agents and brokers. And
Totally.
I keep great relationships. I keep doing business with them.
Right.
Like, I think and I was talking about this this last Monday. If your only value to the transaction is money, like you don't have a lot of value. Because how many investors are out there?
A lot.
Thousands.
Yeah.
Like in San Diego right now, you could probably be like 1,000 people raise their hand, like, I want to flip a house, right? Maybe like more than that. And so we bring so much more to the table than closing.
Sure.
So much more. And that's why I named the company Resolve. We just solve a lot of issues.
Sure.
And so we make a lot more than the average wholesaler, and I probably make more than most flippers that do all the remodeling on every property because of the amount of work we do on the deals. And so, like, what I look at us more is like we provide investors with clean deals to buy. And we're not just like selling them in a drop of a hat. I own a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And then I'll sell it to them, and I'll figure out like I have escrows that'll go a really long time, but like getting tenants out, like all this stuff, right? There's so much to the business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anything
I've seen so much.
Right. I mean, anything that anyone in terms of flipping is buying is some type of distressed or weird.
There's something going on.
Awkward situation.
And none of them are the same.
No.
They may rhyme with the others, but they're not the same.
I had a tenant threaten to kill me yesterday. That was fun.
There you go.
Yeah. So I mean, shit like that happens all the time. So,
all the time.
Yeah, and it's just
And like I was listening to some of your story in the podcast you did prior, and I was listening to how you grew up with a single mom, and like I didn't know that about you, right? And we can all relate, and I think probably what's making you really good at the business now, and like watching you grow, is you can use. I mean, we've all had some darkness in our life,
100%,
right? We all have family with drug issues. There's some addiction stuff here, there. There's I grew up in a middle class family, whatever, right? Well, at least I had that.
Yeah.
But there's shit in all our families. And all that stuff, when you sit down with tenants and you're like, man, I understand where you're coming from. That relatability, and I think that's a huge separator, I think, with our company as opposed to a lot of others, is that we're very upfront about that piece. I'm not too corporate.
Right.
When I sit with people, I'm like, I'm real.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah,
they're real life situations.
Right.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, yesterday was the owner, because the tenant is who called me to threaten to kill me, and she's just like, I know he's rough around the edges, blah blah blah, and I was like, honestly, he reminds me of my grandpa. My grandpa was like an old, sarcastic, military guy, and he didn't mean to be a dick, but he came off as a dick.
Yeah.
And so I related it to her, and she totally got it. But then it was like, just never ending. But once he called me, it was like, I'm canceling this thing. Get me away from this dude. But,
I mean, certain
situations.
Certain deals
You have to be relatable though. That's 100%.
Yeah.
Agree. Which episode were you listening to?
I think I forget
Was it that?
which one. I
Was it with
listened to a
Randa?
few when you asked me to be on it.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Get an understanding.
They're all different. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, they're all very different. Get into different conversations. Some deep, some business. But yeah.
Yeah, I listened to a few.
Yeah, I like that. What? Any stories? Like really good stories that stick out?
Man, there's so many damn stories, man. I mean, it's actually overwhelming.
I saw in your story the other day that you were talking about one very specifically recently.
Shoot, I mean, I don't know. Probably this tenant issue I'm dealing with, right?
Oh, okay.
This one's pretty gnarly, dude. Yeah, I mean, like anything else, these are just properties. But like there's a back unit. 3+ years ago, there was this family. There's this single guy that lived in the back unit of the duplex, and there's this family lived in front of him. The front unit, Hispanic family, been there for 20 years, right? And multiple grown kids, whatever, in and out all the time. The back unit had this one dude living there, and apparently wasn't paying rent for years, but like no one really gave a shit.
Right.
Like, he's just a guy, whatever. And he ends up hooking up with this chick who brings in her son. Her son is like early 20s, completely just not with it mentally, right? And so over time, the front tenant would hear screaming, start to hear. He's like, fuck, dude, like they're screaming again.
Right.
In the middle of the night, he'd go over there and be like, dude, stop yelling. Like, you guys, like it was just becoming kind of a chaotic
problem,
kind of an area, right?
Yeah.
And then one night he hears a bunch of screaming. It's actually on a 911 call right now.
Oh, shit.
He hears a bunch of screaming and crazy whatever. And he's like, it was a little bit different. He's like, and I look back there and there's smoke coming out of the duplex of the back unit. Now these are separate, so the walls aren't combined.
Right.
He's like, oh, shit. He's like, oh, wait. It took me a second to realize what was going on.
Right.
And he calls 911. It's recorded, dude. Honestly, you could probably pull it up when you're editing this. I haven't listened to it. But, like, one of my guys found it. Like, oh, this is gnarly. But, dude, yeah, basically, dude, it was a 3-person. He murdered them both. Suicide. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And then lit the place on fire.
What the fuck?
whole 9, dude.
No way. This was recent?
So this happened. I mean, I'm an escrow on the deal right now.
Did you already assign it?
No, dude. I'm in the deal right now. I'm actually I'm paying to stay in it because I'm trying to get these tenants out, and I'm trying to help with the dude I'm working with is an investor. He's a good dude. He's like, dude, let's just figure this thing out.
Right.
I was like, hey, I'll pay you like a little per diem to stay in the deal.
Right.
Because I think we can impact this, whatever. But yeah,
that's
so we're dealing with
crazy.
the tenants, and then those tenants don't want to move, whatever. But like, it was over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But
I mean, tenant laws in California are becoming harder and harder. It's like trying to potentially keep rental properties, and everyone has this dream of long-term wealth with real estate, and it's becoming harder and harder to even look at stuff in California to keep.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's all math, right? And I think being math-driven, the most important thing to do as an investor, right? And like, I would say it this way too. It's like I was on a panel like a year and a half ago, and then they sent us a bunch of questions prior, like, here's what we're going to ask you guys, whatever. And one of the questions that they asked in there is like, what's the greatest skill? What do you think one of the greatest skills is of an investor? And I was just like, man, that's an interesting one. And I think everyone thinks about the math side of things. And the math is the most important when it comes to owning a rental. But also there's 2 things that really matter the most, I think. The first one is having impulse control and not making a decision that's kind of crazy. So that could be with a rental where you're like, oh my God, the market's going up, I need to buy something now.
Right.
And like being impulsive. The other one is self-regulation. And I think like neither of those are math. And I think like when you own a rental and you have to be able to self-regulate because a lot of things are going to happen. Like it's not just like you just collect checks every month without any kind of manual work, And in California,
expensive.
Property taxes are expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's property tax.
Yeah.
I mean, the mortgage is there, the payment's there, but everyone's like, but the property tax is so high too.
Sure.
I think it's like, I say this a lot. I mean, like, you have to know why you're buying it.
Right.
So if you're like going to do an appreciation play and you're buying in La Jolla and in 20 years it's going to be worth triple or double what you paid for it.
Right.
That's why you bought it.
Right.
But don't expect to make money on it today.
Totally.
That's not the plan.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I
think that helps you think the long-term vision too.
Totally. When you said that, the first thing that came to mind was mitigate risk. But I do think being self-regulated, I do like that a lot.
Right.
And mitigate risk can be all of that, but
it covers it.
Being self-regulated. There's sometimes where you look at things and you're like, I'll give an example. I bought a place in Palm Springs last year. We kept it as an Airbnb. I always wanted a place in Palm Springs. I always wanted to buy like a cool mid-century house. And
it's a weird market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fully remodeled it. It was probably one of the worst remodels I ever had to do in terms of everything, like plumbing, roof, electrical, everything.
Yep.
Like it needed everything.
Everything. And it was far away.
And it was far away. Yeah. Thankfully, I had like a solid team, so I didn't have to go out there very often.
Right.
But nonetheless, big project to deal with, massive project in a different area. And then I liked the idea of it because it was like, oh, vacation house, rented out as Airbnb, right?
Yeah,
and then all these licenses where you can't do Airbnb because the community was full. So I already had closed on it, anyhow. So it was like all these things that I had to realize it myself, and I had to just do it. And then, now I'm looking at it, I'm like, was it worth it? Sure, for the experience and the education behind it. But for 4 months last year, so I rented it out twice last year because you could do 30 days. Okay. So it's basically a midterm rental.
Okay.
$4,000, the mortgage is $8,000. Right. And then of the $4,000, the first month I had a gas leak. So then I had to fix a gas pipe. So then there goes that $4,000. I had to pay actually $6,000 out of pocket for one of the months. And then November was finally like a positive month. Yeah. And so it's just funny because you look at things that you think you want to do or that you think you need to do to take the next step in life and have wealth, but at the end, it's like some of them are just like, they just don't make sense. And that was more of like a mental thing that I probably should have mitigated myself, but yeah.
I mean, I think that goes back to impulse control.
It does. That's what I was going to say, yeah.
When I think about impulse control, I think about doing your diligence prior.
Right.
So then you knew that. And that's really the only thing you can do.
It is.
And do enough research.
Right.
Because, and the laws are going to change and all that, but like, if you at least could do a short-term rental.
Sure, yeah.
Which is what your plan was, and you pro forma'd.
Right. I actually didn't do the math in terms of the rental income. To me, I was looking at it like, oh, maybe I'll break even on it, and then we'll have a second house. Yeah, because my dad was out there, and so we wanted just kind of like a second home, and I think last year was finally the year where I felt like I can finally keep a lot more real estate.
Yeah, start doing it.
But then after keeping it, I'm like, wait, I shouldn't be buying things that may not appreciate the best or that don't cash flow. So now I'm like, maybe I should just 1031 extra. Yeah, I mean, but still not really a great tax write-off because I can't like doing a cost segregation on a single family house is like
it's something,
but not like
like
I'm not gonna get a whole lot.
It depends.
Yeah, but
I hear you. But I would do that before you 1031 it because you're in a 1031 it anyway.
Right.
Max out your cost segregation.
For
sure, 100%. Because you basically get 5x. So commercial you get 15x. Right. And cost seg on single family is 5x. So basically, on the very basic math of it, let's say you bought a $500,000 property, you could deduct probably about $1.50.
Okay.
And so that gives you and then if you're not gonna realize those gains for 100 years anyway,
right?
You might as well just max it out and just or you just dump it on 2 years, take your money. I don't know.
Right. And I'm still learning that.
Put it somewhere
that
else.
stuff. On
taxes.
Well, taxes
No,
when you're
dude.
flipping
Why would
houses
you know?
and buying real estate. Like I had no idea up until I started doing it more like the last few years.
Yeah, because now you have real
assets
gains.
And
real gains to figure out how to wipe out. Otherwise, you're just going to write a check to the IRS every year.
Yeah,
that's the biggest challenge with wholesale. Or in flipping in general, right? Is you're paid an ordinary income tax. You're not paying capital gains tax, right?
Right.
And so you're taxed at the highest rate. Blah blah blah. So then you're like, okay. Basically, what we figured out is for every 4 deals we did, we have to at least buy 1 rental or attempt to. And it forces you to do that. So it actually forced you to own it. So like what we're doing, the business model has certainly shifted. I transitioned out of and I've certainly shifted into, okay, how do we, the plan this year effectively is to get it's all multifamily stuff with that side, not a bunch of single family rentals and just because of the time and energy. And the cost seg is nicer.
Yeah, it's bigger.
You're forced to.
Right.
So in your commercial, you get a bigger, like I said, bigger deductions. But then you're forced to. But once you max out and deplete your cost seg, Now you're forced to 1031 it.
Right.
Okay, so you're forced to trade into bigger deals. You have to.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm not getting a tax deduction anymore.
Right.
I'm like, I have now all these income from these rentals. And so that's the math equation.
I like that. Someone that I've met recently who's really, he's a guy that I was saying who's doing 100 flips a year and basically semi-retired now, who was local. Him and I had coffee the other day, and he was telling me, he's like, dude, you need to sell your rentals. You need to 1031 them into a big multi-unit. He's like, your goal,
tax write-off, dude.
Yeah, your goal should be to 1031 every year into something bigger and bigger, that every year if you can gain $1 million of equity in the next 10 years, you're done.
He's not wrong.
And it kind of like opened my mind a little bit. I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh, I think I'm doing it right with buying single family and little stuff.
How do you know that?
You don't.
Until
no
you're
one
in
knows.
the game.
Right.
And then when you're in the game, there takes a lot of work to unpack it. It's not like this. Like I have a full-time, and one of the things I think is a little bit probably different than me than most, right, is I have an investment company. So like I have a full-time controller who manages all my cash all the time, who manages all my money. Like I have, besides like other operational staff, with my CPA. So like I meet and talk to them every day.
Right.
Like it's not like, and then like we close our books out every month. Where did we end out last month? What kind of stuff do we can do to mitigate? Like what do we need to do to do X? And so pay less here. Like, so besides running the business, like there's this whole financial side of it. Thank God I had some background, but not at this level.
Right.
You don't learn it until you're in it and you're like, oh shit.
Making mistakes. Not even mistakes. It's learning lessons. Yeah.
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 Like you don't know the problems, when I say they're good problems, by the way.
Sure.
None of these are bad.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're like, how do I solve these good problems in a way where, and everyone's got different CPAs and all that stuff. But like, that's just the math.
100%.
That's the math part.
Yeah.
The logic part.
To be vulnerable. I feel like this last 12 months, taking on when you're talking about seeing how much cash you have and those types of things, I went into a handful of flips all at once.
There you go.
Like at the same time.
Good.
And I invested in the majority of them, and then I took outside funds. Then I was like, wait a second, where's all my fucking money at? I'm like, I looked at my bank account and I was like, I'm a little nervous, right? With my high overhead, with multiple mortgages, with a wedding that I just paid for.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. And it's scary to look at because I don't think people realize this when you're flipping, when you're dealing with large sums of money constantly, little like $10,000 isn't going to do anything for you. $20,000. Like you need a lot of money, a lot of revenue coming in consistently.
Yeah.
So it was a big reality check where I was like, okay, I'm not buying anything else.
You go through phases, and this is how I explain investing in a lot of ways because you don't know it unless you're in your position. I can say this, but you don't know that you know that you know.
Right.
It's a huge inhale.
Yeah.
With very little exhale.
Right.
And that can be really hard. That is the hardest part. That's what I'm talking about self-regulation. You're sucking in. You're like,
yeah.
And you're letting out a little bit of air here or there.
Right.
Once you can understand that you can actually breathe while you're sucking in, while you're trying to inhale air, you can actually start to breathe and look at different areas, and the world starts to open, and you start to understand how to build a company, how to build leverage, how to have other people doing other things. And then taking things off your plate, hiring the right people, putting in the right places, that really helps you exhale slowly.
Right. Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
But that's the only way to grow.
Yeah. No, of course.
Is holding your breath for a while and being white knuckling it for a little bit.
Yeah. I was definitely redlining for sure. And then, but it was like, I think it was like on my side of things, like a breakdown for a breakthrough. So I felt like I went through that and I was like, wow, okay, I don't think I can handle this many deals at once unless I hire and delegate and I have a shitload more cash or I raise on more deals and keep my cash. But it's interesting. I don't know that a lot of people can really relate to a lot of like what we can go through. I mean, you're at a way different level than I am. I mean, I'm still small time, but I don't think a lot of people can relate. Like,
no, how could you?
Yeah.
It's just banana taste.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You should try one.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
So, the relatability is interesting because I think when someone's following investing and trying to learn the space, and you do have to, there's an element of having to understand what you're getting into, and I think that's helpful. But just like anything else, you don't know unless you get into something and actually do it.
Right.
You just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about self-regulation and the importance, because a lot of people can crumble in that situation.
Right.
And I know investors that have been in that situation about 5 and just fell apart.
Right.
And they couldn't manage the stress. And when you can't manage stress, or if you can't manage, like, that stuff's like, that's really it.
Oh, it can eat you alive. Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, you've been in way more, and here's what tends to happen. You've probably been in way more other stressful situations that were pretty more challenging. You're like, this is hard, but like, dude, not as hard as like, shit I've been through here.
Yeah. Previous childhood stuff. Yeah, for sure. 100%.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
Like, it's just,
Yeah.
okay, it's money, it's a deal. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was also going on when I was getting married. So that was challenging. Like,
Yeah.
planning a wedding, sending out wires for wedding shit when I'm like worried about all these deals and money coming in and money, like, you're just like, fuck.
Yeah.
You know, and then my
Good
wife
for you.
showed me this app that you can on Chase that you can see how much money you spend every month. So she looked at my spending report
Well,
and
yeah.
I don't even want to say the number, but for me it was like, for her, she makes 50 grand a year maybe.
Yep.
And you know, I'm spending like 5 or 6 times that in 1 month on some
When you're
cases.
remodeling
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah. So it's funny.
It's very cash intensive.
Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. So this is what's so important too when you get into business, and obviously you're at a phase of your learning and you're growing, and
Right.
you're obviously separating from your previous career, which is a huge win, dude. Like,
Yeah.
Huge congrats.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Is you need to understand what a cash flow report is.
Right.
You need to understand what a P&L is. And pay attention to those things, because that's how you model out anything in scale.
Yeah.
Because you're not really going to know. Like, you can start to model expenses, and you need to build a pro forma into like the next 3, 6, 9 months, year of like, here's expected, here's expected business, here's expected results, and then that's how you're able to hire to a business, because you do have to make future bets.
Right.
This is why most investors get really caught up, is because they're in that situation. They just look inward and they look down.
Right.
And best example I can give, when I was 10 years old, I remember I went riding with this, he was a professional kind of cyclist, mountain bike rider, and I didn't know much about whatever mountain bike riding. He's like, Deanna, whatever you do, I was like, look 10 feet ahead when you're riding. He's like, then you can anticipate the problems. I was like, or like rocks or snakes or some shit. Dude, business is the same thing.
Right.
So it's like, you have to look 10 feet ahead. Doesn't have to be 30 or 40 or 50, but you still have to look that 10. And the way to do that, and dude, I was a sociology major. I got a D in math. I was like an athlete student guy, right? All that stuff. But finding the right people that can help me model the future out scenarios.
Right.
And that would let me to. So then I'm like, okay, so when I do this and when I do this, when I do that, as opposed to being super reactionary.
Right.
And when you start getting into business and you're like very excited about it, you learn how to do something. I could do this one house. I could do another house, whatever. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of growth. Is doing that and then being able to build something around a future strategy.
Right.
And that's where, we're talking about wholesale too. It is more prescriptive revenue than flips, because you have a hedged bet and a hedged buyer. You can factor in values because you know what your revenue is going to be.
Sure.
So when it comes to like financial reporting, right, where most people are like, I don't even, financial reporting is the most important thing, because it effectively tells you like, okay, we expected this. What do we actually do? And if you're looking at your bank accounts, like I've been there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think everyone who's
Like,
trying to grow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a bad problem. Like I guess someone could look at it like a bad problem, but I looked at it like an educational experience.
Right.
Where now I look at things a little bit differently.
Right.
And then everything now, if we have more direct seller stuff, I'm just wholesaling those and closing on the ones that make more sense.
Yeah.
So now I'm protected of cash and being a little bit smarter than I once was, because you think you have a tons of cash. Because I think people really don't realize how much cash you need.
I mean, how broke investors actually are.
Yes. Like how much cash you really need. Like I think
Yeah.
to run a really solid flipping operation, like really solid, I think you probably need at least $2 million that you can't even touch, realistically.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do and all that, of course. But yeah, I mean, you need capital to be in the space.
Right.
I mean, that is a real thing. Or you need to understand how to get access to capital.
Right.
But then if you're going to get it, how do you secure it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and having a track record of deals makes all that stuff easier and
Sure.
all that stuff. But absolutely, dude. It's a very cash intensive business.
Yeah.
That's why most people start in like, cheaper areas or whatever. They're buying stuff for 30 grand, selling it for maybe 65, 70 or whatever.
Right. Like making 10K spreads and
Yeah.
walking away. Yeah. Midwest
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Right. Like because they're like, well, the point of entry is a little easier.
Sure. But you're still spending, like, in terms of a marketing spend, you're still spending the same to make the 10, if that makes sense. Like for us,
I agree with you.
like if we're spending, if we're have a direct marketing budget, we're spending 30 or 40. For us, we're getting 5 to 10x return. Where someone like them, if they're spending the same amount of money, I don't think they're getting more deals. Their deal flow is probably going to be the exact same as ours, but their cost per deal is going to be much higher.
I don't disagree. Everything you're saying is exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through. I had a bunch of. I posted this on Instagram the other day. Like, I went through as I was in wealth management for a long time, so I'd sit in a lot of seminars and event, whatever. But one of the things I had in there was like sell things, give you like a higher base units of activity. So like things that like actually pay more money.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. I went through my 2010 notes. I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. I was selling insurance products, and I was paid for I wasn't solving with no problem.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever. Like,
You got to solve bigger problems to make more money.
which is what you and I both know is a very hard sale. Insurance is not like this sale where you can just walk in and you're like,
Right.
you got to be good.
Yeah.
And you need volume.
Yeah.
You need volume to actually make money.
Well, yeah, title insurance. I mean, I needed volume in
Real
order
volume.
to make good money, or what I
Yeah.
thought was good money. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Real volume
Yeah.
too.
Right.
Not like few a month. Like
No, you got to have
50.
40 or 50
Right.
clients or more
I
at
mean,
one time.
That's why, what's funny about it is, and I think about it, and obviously you're having success. You're going to have success.
Thank you.
But it's like the major reason why is because you have an unfair advantage coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that like when I got into this space, for people that are interested in and I talk a lot about this a lot, especially now I'm doing a lot of different speaking stuff and invited to, which has been great.
Yeah.
Is do what you want to do and what you're good at, but also do what you have an unfair advantage in. Like when I got into real estate, I had an unfair advantage for a few different reasons. Like besides the being social, have a good being a good communicator and all those things, I had a financial background, right? That gave me a significant unfair advantage. And then I'm dealing with agents. I used to be an agent. I sold insurance.
Right.
Okay, so agents run very small numbers, right? The volume we ran in title for the amount of years that you did it, dude, your advantage plus the relationships you built is just way further than someone coming in from a different space and be like, I want to start flipping houses.
Right.
And that's huge.
Yeah. No, it definitely
huge.
definitely is. I mean, that's the only reason why it happened all so freaking fast.
Right.
Because I was starting to get deals just directly from realtors.
Right,
Now
you
it's a
have
little bit
relationships.
different, but now it's a balance of the two, direct to seller and with agent stuff. But and then also being an agent before too, I think people wrap their head around not being be able to wrap their head around what things are worth and values and repair budgets and shit like that. Because back in the day, I would help. I was writing offers for Pintar back in the day when they were buying rentals for their portfolio and their fund, and so I had to do all those calculations back then.
That's right.
And then
that's right. I forgot you were doing that.
Yeah, and then REIG back when they were still around, I was doing all their off-market stuff and doing all their listings for them, and then I'd find them deals because that was my bread and butter back when I was an agent, was investor stuff. So I agree with you, and I think a lot of people don't realize or don't understand what their unfair advantage is.
Right.
Until they finally figure something out, because people always, friends, I'm sure you have the same people where like, oh, this comes so easy to you. How is that easy?
Yeah, there's a lot of times I'll talk to people and they're like, how do I get your brain? And like they'll just ask a question like that. I'm like, A, you're not. I'm like, you are you, I am me, whatever. And B, but like, it's a good question. You have to expose yourself to a lot of different things to see like, okay, what am I good at? Because once those things align, that's where that's
powerful.
It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And you don't know unless you are in that kind of alignment.
Right.
Because for a long time, I wasn't in that alignment. And I was trying to be somebody I wasn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like,
We've all gone through
I'm
that.
going to be a financial advisor.
Right.
I'm going to be this guy.
Right.
And I'm like, I hate my life every day.
Of course.
Bro, true story. When I first met you, I was like, and I was telling my wife this on the way down here. I was like,
Oh God.
dude, this guy reminded me when I was in financial services.
How funny.
I swear to you.
Really?
I was like, he doesn't like what he does. You're wearing a suit
Yeah, I'm
you
not a
didn't
suit
like
guy.
to wear.
Yeah.
And just like I could just tell that you were just down. Like you weren't that into what you were doing. I think you convinced yourself that you were.
Well, I'm sure you've met a lot of
But
people.
I knew you were like, I could just tell like this dude wants to do way more than he's doing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I definitely, it's funny because I'm not a suit and tie guy at all. Like this is how I dress every day.
I get it.
And still, it for the last 2 years, and maybe COVID really did it for me. I think COVID really pushed me into a place of like, who am I and who I want to be?
Yeah.
And like your natural who you want to be. Like I'm not going to be some fake person anymore. If I want to cuss, I'm going to cuss.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go, if I start working with a client that's an asshole, I'm not going to work with them. I'm going to respect my time and my energy a little bit more. But I think COVID really pushed me into that space of where I was just like, I finally just didn't give a fuck. I'm like, I'm going to be me and that's it.
Interesting.
Because
what was it in COVID?
I don't know. Well, just the fact that we had to stay home and then we weren't going into the office. There weren't any meetings anymore. So it was like all over Zoom. So then I wasn't wearing dress clothes anymore, and it took me out of that. Like I haven't worn dress clothes other than my wedding. Before like my wedding,
Right.
I haven't worn a suit in forever.
Sure.
And but it feels good to be more authentic and to be yourself and not have to put on this persona of like, oh, what can I do to get a title order? You know? Yeah, like I didn't want to be that person. And two, like you meet a lot of people in our space, and I don't think I ever really gave off the like I'm a title person vibe.
No.
But there's a lot of people that you can meet where you know that they're a title person. And they give off that vibe. And I've just never had that. And I think I just finally realized once I found flipping and like this space where I was just like, yeah, I'm out.
Right.
So
no,
yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That
Thanks.
congruency is everything.
Yeah.
That's probably like the biggest thing. No, dude, like I get it.
Yeah.
I was in it.
Yeah.
It was very similar. So I can completely relate to that feeling of just being done. So it was like the environment change of being home where you're just like,
yeah, I think so.
I don't like this anymore.
No. Yeah. There was a lot of things too. I mean, dude, for me in terms of what the business was back then, it was just coming through so fast in terms of title business. Like revenue just shot through the roof with where interest rates were and things moving and all of that. So it was like, okay, I'm making $20,000 or $30,000 a month consistently without having to pick up a phone or do any requests because business was so good that no one needed anything from me.
Wow.
Right. And then and I was still at that time still flipping. So like the flipping money was still coming in. That was like passive because I was doing it with Marcel. So it was like all this time on my hands. And it just got me a lot of time to reflect on the things that were important, and figure out who I was because I was always trying to work so hard for something else and not for myself.
Yeah,
so
it makes sense.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a trigger, like something triggered where you're like, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to figure it out. COVID did a lot of things for a lot of people.
It did. Good, bad, ugly,
Sure.
whatever. Yeah, I mean, it was all different.
Exposed a lot of relationships.
Yep.
Exposed a lot of things for. That was a tough time, dude.
Yeah, it was tough.
It was tough.
We, my wife and I got closer during COVID.
Yeah.
Like she was working from home too. Obviously, she works in New Venture, so she was working from home. So we were like going on more walks and spending more time together. And I was still trying to figure out life before her and I got engaged. Like I was still, enjoying myself and like to go out with my buddies and do all that stuff. I didn't know, like, obviously, you heard my story growing up from a single mom. Like, I didn't know, and divorce, multiple divorces.
Yeah.
So I just never saw marriage in my future for the longest time or kids. So that actually made me realize, too, that, like, that was very important for me. So it was COVID did weird shit.
Right.
But all good. I mean, it was good, but it was bad, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
No.
And I think we experienced that. My wife and I experienced that too. We definitely got closer in a lot of ways. There wasn't anywhere, to your point, there's nowhere to hide. Like if you weren't happy with you and like you're with yourself all day.
Yeah, 100%.
And more so then. You couldn't hide it with, and especially in real estate, a lot of people can hide their incongruencies or their whatever it is with like happy hours, and there's a lot of drinking and a lot of just like very hazy, whatever. Like, you're around people all the time, but you're very, very, very few amount of time are you actually by yourself, I guess, in the space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even being around a ton of people and happy hours and all that stuff, I still think it's lonely and draining in a way.
Depending on what you're doing.
Yeah. Like being around.
Now you're jazzed to be there.
Well, it's different.
More so.
Well, yeah, it was different, but people don't know. Like, unless they're listening to this whole podcast right now, they don't know. So I've kept it under wraps for a long time. I don't know. Maybe they see, obviously my content's nothing to do with it. So maybe they realize, but
whatever.
Yeah, it's all good. Any big goals? Any passion projects you're working on?
The biggest goal right now is like, I can tell you that like, I have the most badass staff, and like, we are like, that's the biggest goal. I'm living it. If that helps you understand. Yeah. Like, it's like our company is growing in a really, really like the right way. The culture is freaking sick.
That's awesome.
Like, I have the best. Like, I don't call anyone employees. These are just like staff. Like, we are growing something into something really meaningful. I'd say the biggest goal, if I had to say this is the big station, this is like the long term, whatever, is to what we're building now is getting to effectively 1,000 doors. If you want to just say, here's the big goal, right? At the end of the day, if that takes 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, 30 years, the plan is to methodically grow and enjoy the process along the way. Because I've been in situations prior that weren't happy. Right. Yeah, we were making a lot of money, but there was like a lot of internal conflict on the way. So my biggest focus now is getting all my staff, employees, partners where they need to go. And I want everyone to partake in the upside of the business. So as we grow, like, everyone should be involved because of the amount of work and the stuff we've been through to do what we've been able to do, learn business how we collectively. Right. And their commitment and my commitment to them is to make sure all of them end up financially independent along the way. So that is the main goal. And along the way is being able to be a part of and educate, teach people about money and investing. That's part that's always been like a important, I'd say, passion of mine, is to teach and educate, And I have a lot of financial knowledge I know I can bring to the table. I have a lot of real estate knowledge I can bring to the table. And I think I can help, and so I really like that component too. And experience. That's the big. Well, I have a lot of a lot of experience with a lot of experience. Yeah, I can honestly speak from experience, and I'm very real, and I think like that's my biggest goal. Yeah, is helping everyone around me become successful. I love that with me. Yeah, because like I consider myself, I've been financially cash rich, certainly. Sure, but like fucking down, and so I know that feeling. And I'm like, I don't want that one. Right. That's not a good one. Right. I want the one where it's all the above. Yeah. And that's the building. That's the phase I'm in now. Right. Like, grow a company and team together the right way, do the right things, solve a lot of cool problems, fix things, and enjoy the process. Yeah. And get enjoyment out of their success. I feel like it's a huge. Yeah. Having employees now, it's really cool to see that. That's awesome. Yeah. So you're starting to feel some of the. Yeah. And dude, it's so important that like everyone wins together. And that's not hokey. That's not like, kind of, sort of, that'd be nice, bullshit. Like, this is real shit. Like, we all win. Yeah, 100%. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I make this joke that our transaction manager, I was talking to some people, I'm like, bro, like, he'll make like $30K a month. That's great. Like, this isn't like a little bit, you know? Yeah. Like, it's not like, so everyone is like building together. Yeah, I love that. My acquisition girl, she was my assistant. Last year when I hired her on, she was going to be my assistant to handle a mixture of like transactional stuff and follow up and a mixture of a bunch of stuff. Sure. And I'd fully pushed her into acquisitions, and she's never had sales experience, nothing like that. We do coaching, so it's like investing coaching. So I put her heavily through the program, made sure she had like proper role training experience. Yeah, you got trained. She had her biggest month in January, and she made almost $15,000 in commission. Sure.
And it's like, dude, to watch her, like she cried. She's like, dude,
awesome.
I still have credit card debt.
Right.
Like they're, barely making any money. Like she's never made more than 50 grand a year.
Right.
And this
That's a
year
big thing.
she's on pace to do 200K.
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
it's cool to watch that,
Yep.
to be a part of that and be able to help. Sometimes I have imposter syndrome, like, I'm not a good leader or whatever, but just watching her success makes me feel better that I'm being a good leader.
Sure.
So it's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, man, that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, other people's success is the most important thing, and I think that's something you need to take care of yourself first, right? Clearly,
Of course.
You can't help people from a place of weakness.
Sure.
That was hard for me for a long time because I used to be that person. Well, regardless of anything, I'm going to make sure that other people are good. So one of, and I think when you talk about one of your greatest strengths can also be your greatest weaknesses if you're not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so not being aware that you're too giving sometimes can be a problem. But being aware of it, setting the right boundaries and expectations with people as you're growing them and working with them is the most important piece.
Yeah.
And then because I'm so transparent, we don't want to use the word transparent and all this crap, but it's because I'm so honest and authentic with the business and what we're trying to build, everyone rallies together to be a part of it. And I work for them, dude. They don't work for me.
Right.
And I'm sure you feel the same way with
Yeah.
her. She gets an opportunity, I better close this.
Yeah. No, it's a priority. Yeah.
That is the priority.
Right.
Is performing so you can get, you can help her.
100%.
And that's such a bigger driver
Yeah.
than I want to make $1 million this year.
100%.
Which people, okay, cool. What?
Yeah. But I mean, and I
Which
think,
I've been that guy too.
yeah, I think at some point,
Yeah.
last year was my first 7-figure year. And
Nice, dude.
at a certain point, what do you do with all that money? At this point, it's like, okay, I want to give back. I want to watch someone else's success. And that's kind of where I think, but you have to get there first. You have to get there, or I have to get
You
there.
have
In order to get to a point where you can start being able to give and push other people to be as successful as you, or get to a level of success that they want.
I think define what you're trying to build, right? I think that's
Right.
probably one of the biggest pieces is define what you're trying to build, because, and that's the thing I think in real estate, I think small business owners in general, is you get into something and you want to make money, you want to be a certain person, whatever, but define what that is. And I
Right.
think once you define what you're trying to build, the rest will really help take care of itself. If you took and so meaning this, if you're I want to build an acquisitions person or 2 acquisitions people to make whatever it is, and I
Right.
want to be a company that does this, that stuff's really, really critical because it gives you a North Star and someone to work for. And to your point, if I have $1 million, I know exactly what I would do with it because I have, and that's the roadmap I'm talking about,
Sure.
right? Because in investing in where am I investing in first?
Sure. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so, okay, I know it goes towards, for me, everyone's on salary commission, health insurance. So I have a very, my foundation is strong, right? In real estate, you have to have a strong foundation to be able to build a big house, whatever. Right. So in a company, you need a strong foundation. So you need and then they get also upside participation. Okay, now what's the upside participation look like? What are we building to allow participation, meaning equity? Because what happens is in the flipping business, because it can be this and up and down, you don't really know necessarily. A lot of people are scared, and this is what happens in real estate. Everyone's a bunch of, and I was in brokerage, so I understand the model. 1099 people running around with their heads cut off,
Right.
Not really knowing what's going on. The ultimate sandbag with a hole in it.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
Especially in recruiting models.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Trying to convince people to work hard. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And it's not nearly as productive as you would assume it is, right? Anyway, so it's how to have a strong foundation, and then now okay, I want to make more investments. Okay, maybe in what are those investments, and what are the things that matter to people, and what do I know, and what I'm going to ask them, what matters to you most?
Sure.
And one of the questions I do ask a lot of my staff all the time, especially when I'm what are you into and what are you good at? And they're well, I'm in, and I want to create a business, a plan for them. Let's say business plan within our organization of how can they grow into that role,
Right.
and then make investments into them to grow into that role.
Yeah.
So, I have a guy that he's taking over marketing. He's crushing it. He was my data guy.
How funny.
But he's I really like marketing. I'm okay, let's
Cool.
hire, now that you know marketing, you can now train somebody to handle
The data.
the data side.
Right.
And do some of that work, which is a lot of work.
It is.
And manage, analytics and data and blah, 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 whatever. So I think like, and that's what I've started to understand, like this concept in business that I think was in theory for a long time I'm able to apply, is watching people grow into their roles.
Right.
And then now, because the culture is so strong, because you can hire in outside people that have experience, and you need to do that. It's a lot of times to grow faster. But just because you grow faster, what I learned, because I did this, I got up to 25 employees, and we got up to 8-figure annual revenue, blah, 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 yay, sounds exciting. But the challenge was we'd hired people in, but our culture sucked.
Yeah.
And when your culture's bad, attrition is high. So I'm like, I'd rather train people from the ground up, teach them the basics and concepts, what I understand, and then allow them to grow into roles to train other people, and hire those other people and disciplines underneath them. And now that's a manager, that's a leader.
Right.
Because you and I both know and this isn't always, but in the right environment, the right culture, the right leader who's done the job can tell you, Josh, hey, bro, when you're on the phone and someone says this, say this, here's why. Because you've done it. You've done that call. You know that. You know how to like convert that prospect to a meeting or a sale.
It's funny you say that, yeah.
If you're doing a cold call, whatever.
Right.
Because you've called on hundreds of agents trying to sell title insurance.
Right. But I've
You
also
sat
called
with
on sellers
thousands
back in the day when I was an agent. Yeah.
to get listings.
Yeah.
So you understand the psychology of who you're dealing with, which qualifies you to be good at a trainer at that job. As opposed to someone who's a call center manager, who I've hired, coming from a different industry, which I've hired, who's done a piss poor job. My mistake.
Right.
Because I learned, because they don't know the business.
Right.
They know the concept of the business, but they don't know the business of the business of the business. They really know it. And that's the part that's very, very, in our space, which is heavy niche, heavy talent, like if the ones that are good can always pass their knowledge down to the others. That's always going to be the case, right? And if you can convey a message and communicate thoroughly and effectively, create standard operating procedures, fancy word for fucking process.
Right.
You can start to build something meaningful.
Right.
And so now in the real estate space for us, like where now when I am talking to agents and brokers and having these conversations, these higher level agents, these brokerages, whatever, I'm teaching them like, you're running it wrong. And here's why. And here's my actual proof, because I've done X. So now I'm able to offer other products and services to some of these companies that before I would just, like I said, if my only value was money, I'm just another investor.
Right.
Right? The investing for me is the golden goose. But my value is in all these other products and services I can offer, most for free.
Right.
To help build their companies. Because the stronger they are,
right,
the stronger I'm able to be with them too.
100%. Yeah, love that.
So it's internal focus and external focus too.
I like that. It's great, dude.
Different than most.
Different than most, for sure. Was there anything that you, I know we're probably almost an hour now.
That's okay.
Anything that you want to touch on? Any closing thoughts?
Long-winded.
No, it's all good. No, these are always an hour. Plus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, man. I mean, it's not a ton. Really just happy to be on the show and help you grow your following.
Appreciate it, bro. Well, I appreciate you for
awesome
coming on. This is fun conversation. Definitely. I felt like you were interviewing me at times, but it was great. Honestly, like especially to get advice from you and just a simple conversation. Selfishly, it was awesome. So appreciate you being on. Thanks everyone for watching. We appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe. Go follow Daniel Tromello. His links will be in the description. See you guys later.